Now we're moving from a whole series on textual criticism to a new series that today is just about choosing a good commentary, and then we'll be moving more and more towards the higher criticisms, which I will need to explain to you what they are. But today is a really fun and easy session, lecture 7 on choosing a good commentary. I'd like to start by encouraging you to get to know this book, to spend time with it. How to Read the Bible for All It's Worth by Gordon Fee and Douglas Stewart. They have written a chapter on every genre or form of literature that is in the Bible, and it's the best book there is. You can tell because over 900,000 copies have been sold, and it's in the 4th edition, and you should get the 4th edition, not an earlier one that happens to be on sale, because they updated it. So the last update was in 2014. And at the end of the chapters on the various genres in the Bible, they then have an appendix where they first of all tell you in some amount of detail how to choose a good commentary, and they give 7 criteria for that. We will look through those 7 right now, and my comments may not exactly match with theirs, so it's good both to hear me and to read what they say, and I'll have a little bit to add at the end. What is so important with choosing a good commentary is that a poor commentary can really mislead you in understanding a text, or simply fail to give you good guidance in how to deal with a particular book of the Bible. So we start then with the 7 criteria. The first one, is it exegetical? The point of a commentary is exegesis, not homiletics, not devotions. In other words, it's not meant to give you sermon outlines. It's not meant for you to use in your devotional life. I know some people who read commentaries for their devotions, and maybe that works for them, but this is a study book, and it should guide you in understanding what the text meant then and there, and how each section, if you're, for example, reading through a letter, you're looking at one paragraph after another. If you're reading the Psalms, you're reading each psalm in alone, but some of the Psalms are in a collection, the Psalms of Ascent, for example, so that you would want to understand how they fit together. A commentary should help you do that. So that's the first point. Criterium 2, is something that if you don't know Hebrew and Greek, you might not think is terribly important, but actually you're going to find that it is. Is it based on the Hebrew or Greek, depending if it's Old or New Testament, or is it based on an English translation? Now, I don't want to say that it's wrong for a Bible or a commentary to be based on a translation. For example, the New International Version has a very good commentary series. We'll look at that in just a second. That is based on the text of the NIV. However, the authors who they have chosen are experts in their languages. So it's okay to be based on the translation as long as the author knows and discusses the text in the original languages. It may be transliterated for you so that you can read the Greek and Hebrew words. Hebrew is almost always transliterated. Or you may want to learn to pronounce and read the Greek letters so that you can read individual words. That would be a good goal to have. Number 3 is perhaps, we're going to first of all look at this example. This is the NIV application commentary. There's a couple things I wanted to point out. First of all, that it's based on the NIV. So the New International Version is the text that is used throughout the commentary by the author, Daniel Block. And then I'd like to look at this word here, application. When I see that, I almost start to turn away from that commentary because I think, no, I don't want a homiletics or devotional commentary. I want one that is exegetical. But just because they have the name in the title doesn't mean that it's not, first of all, a very serious book. So this series, in every commentary in this series, they start with a thorough study, first of all, of the ancient document's meaning in its context. So they're doing the exegetical work before they start to talk about application. This one, in a way, is a combination of the both types of commentaries. Now we move on to what I think is the most important criterion. To choose a good commentary, you look inside and you find out when there is more than one meaning for a text, and that happens a lot. Does the author discuss the opinions of other scholars? The author should evaluate all the choices and give their strengths and their weaknesses, not just shoot them down, but also say, well, this argument, what this author is saying makes sense for this and this, but I think this and this, right? So he or she gives all the choices, evaluates them with their strengths and weaknesses, and then gives his or her own opinion. You don't have to agree with the conclusions that the author of your commentary draws, because that author has given you other choices. They've provided all the arguments. You know why they went against a particular opinion of someone else, but you've heard the opinion of that other person, so you can pick that up and develop it further in your own direction. You will have also that other author's bibliography listed in this commentary, so you can chase it down and study what that person wrote in more detail. So it should not be one person talking through the text. It should be one person discussing the various opinions and then showing you why they think a certain thing. Number 4, does the author discuss text critical problems? Now you know a lot more about textual criticism and establishing the text because you've learned some skills there. So now you can read when an author does this type of discussion and really start to understand what they're talking about and maybe even evaluate whether they're doing a good job of it or not. The author of a commentary should not only be aware of textual variation, but that author should explain the evidence for and the significance of the variance. So the NIV is going to read in a certain way, but there will be variation from it. Maybe it read musterion, I think it read marturion, actually, if I remember right. And you know that musterion is another option. The author should discuss that place in the text and establish the text. So they may even decide, and the NIV has one reading, but the author of the commentary on Corinthians in the NIV series might say, well, the NIV made this choice, but I disagree. I would make this choice. And that would be a sign of good critical thinking and writing in a very scholarly way. All right. So the author should discuss text critical problems. 5th criterion, does the author discuss historical backgrounds where they are needed? At the front, and I'll discuss the front of the book in a few minutes, but there should be an entire introductory section which gives the historical background for whatever document you're studying. And then as you move through the text, this may occur a lot or not as much depending on the document, but wherever the historical background impacts understanding of the text, the scholar who wrote the commentary should clearly develop that for the reader. This is what this meant then and there in that historical context, so that their knowledge and skills are being offered to you as the reader. Number 6, does the author provide you with other resources that you can follow up on for further study? I'll mention footnotes in a few minutes, but this includes an extensive bibliography. so that when you turn to the back of the book, every possible book that's been written that this author found important for the study of this part of the Bible is provided there with all the details you need in order to find that book. It should also show up in the pro and con discussions on passages where there are differing opinions. He should be citing other authors, and then you can notice, okay, Fee says this, but Mounce says that. I want to read more about what Mounce says here, and I'm going to go get that book and read him in context and make sure that Fee's really presenting it correctly, for example. And finally, their number 7 is this question: is there an introductory section that provides the framework for the entire book? So say we're reading a commentary on the Gospel of John. There should be a section at the front of the commentary that clarifies the historical backgrounds, which are very important for John's Gospel. And in fact, scholars disagree on the historical backgrounds of John, so it will matter a lot which scholar's opinion you are convinced by, because that will impact your interpretation of the document. So they will provide the occasion of the document. In other words, why was it written? For what situation? And they will discuss such issues as the date it was written and who wrote it. Was it really written by the Apostle John, for example? Or maybe a particular scholar thinks it was written by the disciples of John, or they collected his sermons. All of those things make a difference in how you read the book. So that's the 7 criteria provided in the back of Fee and Stewart, which you should read because it has more detail on each one. But they also make a suggestion that I find quite significant here, that you take, so say you're looking for a commentary on Genesis. Find one of the difficult passages in Genesis, 2:17 is a good one, and examine how that commentary deals with that passage. First of all, they should look at the Hebrew. Second, they should be telling us what other scholars think. They should be providing the strengths and weaknesses of those other scholars, and they should be drawing conclusions. You don't have to agree with the conclusions drawn by the author of the commentary, but the discussion by that author should illustrate the various things that we just learned in the list of 7. And I have some suggestions too. Do not buy a whole commentary series. You can see my books behind me. There are a few books from particular series scattered through the shelves, but there's not a line of books that all look the same. That's because no series has all the best commentaries. Pick out of each series the best commentaries. And you'll find if you look in the back of Fee and Stewart that they suggest 2 or 3 commentaries for each book of the Bible, with updated in 2014. So the very latest ones wouldn't be in there. But that would give you good guidance on what you should be willing to spend your money on. You should never waste your money on a book that you might never use just to make your shelves look good. Right? Buy the books that you're going to use. I have commentaries on my shelves that I have never cracked open because when I was younger, I thought, oh, I have to have all these pretty books on my shelves. Now I have so many books, I'm trying to get rid of them. And so there are commentaries that sitting there that I wish I hadn't bought. Of course, I'm not going to give those away yet, but it was a waste of money probably. Maybe you find them in a thrift store for $1. Well, then of course buy them. But if you're spending $30 or $40 on a book, you better make sure it's one you're really going to use. Also, when you crack open a commentary, you should see extensive footnotes. That's a good sign that this is a scholarly document and that all the different opinions of other scholars have been taken seriously. And finally, look at the date. When I set my undergrads loose in the library and ask them to pick out commentaries that they think are good and bring them to me while I sit at a table waiting for them, they fail to find that the best commentaries are in the reference section, not in the stacks. And so they go down to the stacks and they pull out a commentary and bring it up to me. And it's from the late 1800s. So it's completely outdated and also often written more in a devotional or homiletic way, or simply not being aware of more recent scholarship so that the author could respond to it. There are reasons to read old commentaries, even to make your own comments if you're writing a paper, for example, on how this text used to be understood and how it's understood now. So that would be a reason to look at an old commentary. And there's a difference between a classic written, for example, by Karl Barth or Rudolf Bultmann, who may not be evangelical Christians, but they really knew their stuff. That would be a classic. That's worth owning. But there are other books that are just plain old and outdated. Typically, you should be looking mid-20th century or later, and really most commentaries that you buy should be late 1900s and into the 2000s. But there are sometimes older commentaries that are the best ones ever written. And sometimes, I know of one example that I won't name here, but sometimes a commentary series has an older commentary and they decide they need to update and they replace a great commentary with one of lesser quality. So watch for that too. It's not always the most recent one that is the best. All right, well, we're going to start in our next section looking at other really interesting language issues for a few minutes, and then we'll look at how the canon was formed.